Have you ever stumbled upon a truth so shocking it changes everything you thought you knew about family? That's exactly what happened to me one rainy evening when I drove past an old bridge. There, huddled under the cold concrete, was a figure I almost didn't recognize. My own granddaughter. And in her trembling arms, a baby. She was shivering, hungry and broken. My heart stopped. How had it come to this? Why hadn't anyone told me? Without hesitation, I brought them home. But what I discovered next shook me to my core. Layers of betrayal, lies, and abandonment hidden behind family walls. This isn't just a story about finding someone in the shadows. It's about uncovering the truth, reclaiming dignity, and proving that love can rebuild even the most shattered lives. Stay with me, because what began under that bridge ended with revelations no one expected. My name is Margaret. For years, my life had been quiet, almost predictable. After my husband passed, I settled into a routine. Morning coffee by the window, tending to my garden, and volunteering at the library a few afternoons a week. The house felt empty at times, but I convinced myself peace was better than chaos. Family visits had grown fewer over the years. My children had their own lives, their priorities. My granddaughter, whom I had once rocked to sleep, had all but disappeared from my world. I asked about her often, but the answers were vague. She's busy, or she's figuring herself out. I assumed she was fine, living her life, perhaps even thriving. But deep inside, I carried a hollow ache. There's a unique silence that comes when you're cut off from someone you love, a silence that hums louder than noise. I tried to ignore it, filling my days with chores, books, and small conversations. What I didn't know was that my quiet life was about to collide with a storm I never expected. One that would pull me out of my comfort, shake me to my core, and reveal truths I had been kept from for years. It was a gray evening, rain pouring steadily, the kind that makes the world blur into streaks of water and light. I had stayed late at the library, helping organize books, and I was eager to get home. My wipers struggled to keep pace as I steered carefully down the slick road. Passing under an old stone bridge, something caught my eye. At first, I thought it was just debris or a stray animal, but something in me told me to slow down. I pulled over, straining my eyes through the rain, a figure huddled beneath the concrete, small and trembling. My heart quickened. Who could possibly be out here in this weather? I hesitated, gripping the steering wheel. Every logical thought told me to keep going. It wasn't safe to stop for strangers at night. But my instincts overpowered reason. There was something familiar, almost haunting about that silhouette. I turned off the engine, grabbed my umbrella, and stepped into the storm. Raindrops stung my skin as I walked toward the figure. My shoes splashed through puddles, each step heavier than the last. I had no idea that with each step, I was walking toward a moment that would change the course of my family forever. As I got closer, the outline of the figure sharpened through the rain. She was sitting on the cold ground, knees pulled tight to her chest, shivering under a thin jacket. Then I saw it, a bundle in her arms. My breath caught. I crouched down, tilting my umbrella to shield her. The moment her face lifted toward me, my knees nearly gave out. It was my granddaughter. Her eyes were hollow, rimmed with exhaustion, yet still familiar. The same eyes I used to see sparkle when she played in my backyard as a child. In her arms, wrapped in a worn blanket, was a baby. "Emily?" I whispered, my voice trembling. She froze, shame flickering across her face. Tears spilled down her cheeks, mixing with the rain. "Grandma," she whispered back, her voice cracked and weak. I wanted to pull her into my arms immediately, to erase the years of absence and hurt. But she looked so fragile, so guarded, like any sudden move might break her. For a long moment, we just stared at each other, 2 generations caught in the storm, with a baby's soft cry filling the silence. Finally, instinct overpowered hesitation. I reached out and placed my free hand gently on her shoulder. She flinched at first, then collapsed into me, sobbing into my coat. The baby stirred and whimpered, his tiny face peeking out from the blanket. I carefully adjusted the umbrella to cover him, feeling a surge of both protectiveness and anger. How could things have gotten this bad? Why hadn't anyone told me? "I'm here now," I whispered into her damp hair. "You're not alone anymore." Her body trembled against mine, and between sobs, fragments of words slipped out. No one. Nowhere to go. They don't care. Every word pierced me like a knife. Who had abandoned her? Where was her family? Questions swirled in my mind, but I swallowed them. Right now, she needed comfort, not interrogation. We stayed like that under the bridge, the rain pounding above us, until finally she pulled back, wiping her swollen eyes. "Please don't hate me," she said, her voice barely audible. "Hate you." I shook my head firmly. "Never. But we're not staying here another minute." When I urged her to come home with me, she immediately shook her head. "No, Grandma, I can't. It's too complicated." Her eyes darted nervously, as if expecting someone to appear from the shadows. She clutched the baby tighter, rocking him protectively. "Complicated or not, this isn't safe," I insisted. "You'll both get sick out here." She bit her lip, trembling. "You don't understand. They said I wasn't welcome anymore. If you take me in, they'll turn on you too." "They?" My chest tightened, but she wouldn't answer. The baby coughed softly, a weak, rattling sound that made my heart lurch. That was the moment my patience snapped. "Listen to me," I said firmly but gently. "I don't care what anyone else has said. You're my granddaughter. That little boy is my great-grandson. If the world has turned its back on you, then I'll stand against the world." Her eyes filled with fresh tears, torn between fear and longing. I could see the battle waging inside her, trust or retreat. "Please," I whispered, holding out my hand. "Come home." Minutes stretched like hours as she hesitated, staring at my outstretched hand. The rain had soaked us through, the chill biting at our skin, the baby's cries growing louder. Finally, with a shaky breath, she reached out and placed her trembling fingers in mine. Relief washed over me. Carefully, I helped her stand, steadying both her and the fragile bundle in her arms. She wavered, unsteady from exhaustion, but leaned into me as though surrendering the weight she'd carried for far too long. We walked together through the storm to my car, each step slow and deliberate. I held the umbrella over them, shielding them as best I could. Once inside the warmth of the car, she let out a long sigh, as though the simple act of sitting in safety was a luxury she hadn't known in ages. The baby quieted, his tiny fist curling against her chest. For the first time that night, I saw a flicker of calm pass over her face. As I pulled away from the bridge, I glanced at her. She looked out the window, lost in thought, clutching her child like he was the last thing keeping her alive. That was when I knew. This was only the beginning of a story much bigger than I could have imagined. When we finally reached my home, she hesitated again at the front door. Her eyes swept over the porch, the light in the window, the familiar roses blooming along the fence. "It feels strange," she whispered. "What does?" I asked softly, being here. Like I don't deserve it, my heart ached. I put my arm around her shoulders. "You'll always belong here. This house has seen tears and laughter. It has enough room for your pain and your healing." Inside, the warmth of the fireplace welcomed us. I quickly gathered blankets, towels, and warm milk. She sat on the couch, rocking her baby, her wet clothes clinging to her thin frame. For a moment, she looked like the child I had once cared for, lost, vulnerable, searching for safety. As she settled in, her eyes softened. She whispered almost to herself, maybe I can start over." Little did I know. Her words were the key to a story of betrayal, secrets, and resilience that was only beginning to unfold. The first night under my roof should have brought peace, but instead, silence hung heavy between us. Emily sat curled on the couch, staring at the flames in the fireplace as though they held answers. The baby slept in a basket I had lined with soft blankets, his tiny breaths rhythmic and fragile. I made tea and placed a cup in her hands, but she barely touched it. I didn't push. Something in her posture, rigid, guarded, told me that words couldn't be forced. Instead, I busied myself in the kitchen, watching her from the corner of my eye. She looked worn, far older than her years. Each time the baby stirred, she tensed like a soldier bracing for attack. When I finally sat beside her, she whispered, "It doesn't feel real." Being here, safe, I reached for her hand. "It's real, and it's yours for as long as you need it." Her lips parted like she wanted to say more, but instead she only nodded, clutching the teacup as if it were an anchor. That night, I realized this wasn't just about shelter. Something deeper, something unsaid, was holding her hostage. At 2 a.m., a cry pierced the silence. I rushed to the living room, worried she might need help. Emily was already awake, rocking the baby, her face half lit by moonlight streaming through the curtains. She sang softly, her voice trembling but tender. For a fleeting moment, I saw her as the young girl who once danced in my kitchen, carefree and bright. When she noticed me, she quickly looked away, embarrassed. "Sorry, I didn't mean to wake you." "You didn't," I assured her. "Babies are supposed to cry. It means they're alive, fighting." She smiled faintly, though her eyes glistened. "He's all I have, Grandma. If I lose him, I don't know who I'd be." I wanted to ask, "Who's the father? Where's your family? Why are you out here alone?" But I bit my tongue. The answers would come when she was ready. For now, all I could do was stand beside her in the quiet, sharing her vigil under the moon. The next morning, while folding laundry, I noticed something odd. A small bruise along Emily's wrist, half hidden under her sweater sleeve. When she saw me looking, she quickly pulled the fabric down. "It's nothing," she said too quickly, forcing a smile. My stomach tightened. Nothing about that bruise looked like nothing. I didn't press, but I watched her more closely that day. She jumped at sudden noises, avoided phone calls, and locked the bathroom door even when showering. Her nerves weren't just exhaustion, they were fear. When I tried to reassure her, she whispered, "Some things can't be fixed." I leaned closer, lowering my voice. "Maybe not fixed, but they can be faced. And you won't face them alone." Her eyes filled with tears, but she didn't answer. The wall between us was cracking, but not yet broken. 2 days later, I convinced her to come into town with me. She resisted at first, but I reminded her that fresh air and new surroundings might help. Reluctantly, she agreed. In the small grocery store, I noticed her shoulders stiffen every time someone glanced her way. She kept her head down, clutching the baby to her chest like a shield. At the checkout, a woman we knew from church smiled warmly at me, then looked curiously at Emily. "I didn't know you had family visiting." Emily froze. Her lips pressed into a thin line, and her grip on the baby tightened. I quickly stepped in. "Yes, this is my granddaughter and her son. They're staying with me." The woman's smile lingered, but when we left, Emily hissed under her breath, "Don't tell anyone, please." Her desperation startled me. Whatever she was hiding, it wasn't small. That evening, as we prepared dinner, I finally asked a question I had held back. "What's his name?" Emily's face softened as she looked down at the baby. She brushed her fingers against his cheek. "Nathaniel," she whispered, "but I call him Nate." The way she said it, gentle, reverent, sent warmth through me. "Nathaniel," I repeated, smiling. "A strong name. He'll need it." She looked up at me, her eyes searching mine, as if testing whether I would judge her. When I only smiled again, she exhaled a shaky breath of relief. Naming him out loud seemed to break something open in her. That night, she told me little things, how Nate loved the sound of rain, how he calmed when she hummed the same lullaby her mother once sang to her. It wasn't the full truth yet, but it was a start. Just as hope began to settle in, fear clawed its way back. Late one evening, I found Emily standing at the window, peeking through the curtains. "Emily?" I asked gently. Her face was pale, her voice shaking. "What if they find me here? Who?" I asked, stepping closer. She didn't answer, just pulled the curtain tighter, scanning the street as though expecting a shadow to appear. I placed my hands on her shoulders, steadying her trembling frame. "You're safe here. No one's going to hurt you." But in her silence, I heard the truth. Someone had already hurt her, and she was terrified it would happen again. It was the baby who forced the truth out. That night, Nate developed a small fever. I suggested taking him to the doctor, but Emily panicked. "No hospitals. No paperwork, please." Her fear spiraled so fast, I knew this wasn't ordinary anxiety. Someone was haunting her. I held her by the shoulders, my voice firm but loving. "Emily, if you want me to protect you, I need to know what I'm protecting you from. Please tell me." Her lips trembled. She clutched Nate against her chest, tears streaming down her cheeks. Finally, in a whisper barely louder than the crackle of the fire, she said 5 words that froze me in place. "He knows where I am." Emily sat at the edge of the couch, clutching Nate tightly, her voice barely a whisper. "His father. He's dangerous. I thought I could get away, but he always finds me." I felt my chest tighten. So it wasn't just poverty or bad luck, it was fear of a man. "Emily, you don't have to face him alone anymore," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. She shook her head violently. "You don't understand. He has people, money. He knows how to make me disappear." The way her eyes darted to the door made me realize she wasn't exaggerating. She was living in survival mode. I wanted to storm out, find this man, and give him a piece of my mind. But I knew that would only worsen things. Instead, I placed my hand gently over hers. "Then we'll be smarter. We'll protect you and Nate. But running forever isn't living." Her tears slipped silently down her cheeks. And for the first time, she didn't resist when I pulled her into an embrace. After her confession, I spent the night awake, pacing. I couldn't simply let fear dictate her life. The next morning, I called an old friend, Clara, a retired lawyer with a sharp mind and a bigger heart. When I explained the situation, Clara didn't hesitate. "If this man is threatening her, we can file for protection. And if there's abuse, the law is on her side." I hesitated, knowing Emily might resist. She feared exposure, but silence was no longer an option. At breakfast, I carefully brought it up. "Emily, you don't have to run anymore. There are legal steps we can take. My friend Clara can help." Her eyes widened in panic. "No, if he knows I spoke to anyone, he'll—" She trailed off, shaking. I leaned across the table. "He thrives on your silence, but if we stand together, he loses his power." Emily looked torn, trapped between terror and hope. I knew the choice wouldn't come easily. That evening, as the sun dipped low, I caught Emily staring out the window again. This time, her face was drained of all color. "There's a car," she whispered. "I've seen it before." I followed her gaze. Sure enough, a dark sedan idled near the end of the street, engine humming but not moving. My heart pounded. I pulled the curtains closed, forcing calm into my voice. "Stay inside. I'll handle this." But even as I said it, doubt clawed at me. What if she was right? What if he had already found her? Emily's hands shook as she held Nate tighter. "He's watching us. I know it." I locked every door and window that night, keeping the lights dim. Sleep was impossible. My once quiet home now felt like a hunted place. The fear in Emily's eyes pushed me past my hesitation. The next morning, I insisted she meet Clara. At first, she refused, but finally her exhaustion won out. When Clara arrived, Emily sat stiff, her hands trembling as she rocked Nate. Clara spoke gently, but firmly. "Emily, if this man hurt you, you need protection, not just for yourself, but for your child." Emily's walls cracked. "He hit me. More than once. When I tried to leave, he said he'd take Nate away, that no one would believe me." Her voice broke into sobs. Hearing those words ignited a fire in me I hadn't felt in years. No man had the right to destroy her spirit. Clara leaned forward. "With evidence, we can make sure he never touches you or your son again." "But we need your trust," Emily finally whispered. "I'm scared. But I'll try." It wasn't victory, but it was a step toward reclaiming her life. Clara advised Emily to gather any proof she had, texts, voicemails, anything. Reluctantly, Emily retrieved an old phone from her bag, cracked and taped together. She scrolled through messages, her hands trembling. I glanced at the screen. Threats, insults, even photos meant to intimidate her. "This is enough," Clara said firmly. "This can protect you in court." But Emily flinched. "If he knows I kept these, he'll never stop." I squeezed her hand. "He already won't stop. But this time, you're not alone." As Clara copied the evidence, I caught a glimpse of relief in Emily's eyes, small, but real. It was the first time I saw her believe she might have a chance. 2 days later, while walking with Nate in his stroller, Emily suddenly froze. Across the street, leaning against a lamppost, was a man watching us. Her face went pale. "It's him," she whispered. Before I could react, the man smirked, then disappeared into a waiting car. Emily's knees buckled, and I caught her before she fell. He's letting me know he can reach me anywhere, she sobbed. I wanted to chase him down, but I knew that would play into his hands. Instead, I pulled her close. Then we fight smarter. He's already losing his grip. You have proof now. Still, the encounter rattled her to the core. The illusion of safety shattered, replaced by a chilling reminder that the battle was only beginning. That night, Emily sat across from me, her face pale but determined. I can't keep running, Grandma. If I don't fight back now, he'll haunt me forever, and he'll ruin Nate's life. I nodded, pride swelling in my chest. Then we fight, together. For the first time since finding her under that bridge, I saw steel in her eyes. She wasn't just a frightened girl anymore. She was a mother ready to protect her child at any cost. Clara prepared the paperwork for a restraining order, and we arranged to meet with authorities the next morning. As I tucked Nate into his blanket that night, Emily whispered, "Thank you for not giving up on me." I kissed her forehead. That's what family does. We don't give up. But even as hope flickered, I couldn't shake the thought. What lengths would this man go to once he realized Emily was fighting back? The morning was heavy with tension as Emily clutched Nate's tiny hand, walking beside me toward the courthouse. Her shoulders were squared, but I could see her knuckles turning white as she gripped her documents. Clara met us at the entrance, her calm presence a steady anchor. "Remember, Emily, the truth is on your side," she said firmly. Inside, the walls echoed with hurried footsteps and murmurs. For Emily, every corner seemed like a place her abuser might appear. She flinched when a man in a dark suit walked past, though it wasn't him. I kept my arm looped through hers. "You're not alone," I whispered. Filing for protection wasn't glamorous. It was paperwork, signatures, and recounting painful memories. But as I watched Emily's trembling hand put ink to paper, I knew it was more than bureaucracy. It was her first step toward freedom. The sense of fragile safety shattered when he finally appeared. Tall, broad-shouldered, with that same smug grin Emily had described, he sauntered into the courthouse like he owned the world. Emily froze, her face draining of color. "He's here," she whispered. He locked eyes with her, then smirked, mouthing something only she could read. She squeezed Nate's stroller so hard I feared it might snap. Clara leaned in. "Don't react. That's exactly what he wants." But I could feel Emily's body trembling beside me, every instinct screaming to run. Instead, she stayed. She stayed because this time, she wasn't just a victim. She was a mother with something to fight for. Still, his presence was a reminder the battle was far from over. During the hearing, his lawyer painted him as a loving father, unfairly accused by a confused young woman. My fists clenched as he feigned innocence, his crocodile tears staining his expensive suit. But Emily, her voice soft but steady, spoke her truth. He hurt me. He threatened me. And I was too afraid to tell anyone. Until now. When she read his text aloud, the room grew quiet. Even the judge's expression hardened. He tried to laugh it off, muttering that she was exaggerating. But the evidence in her trembling hands told a different story. For the first time, I saw fear flicker in his eyes, not from losing her, but from losing control. After the session, as we exited the courthouse, he was waiting near the parking lot. Clara urged us to keep walking, but his voice sliced through the air. "You think this little game will save you? You'll regret this, Emily." I spun around before I could stop myself. "Leave her alone. You've done enough," he sneered, stepping closer. "Stay out of it, old woman. This is between me and her." Emily's hands shook as she clutched Nate tighter. But instead of running, she whispered, "Not anymore. This ends here." Security intervened before it escalated, but the chill of his words lingered. He wouldn't let go easily, and we knew it. Back home, the shadows outside felt heavier than ever. Every creak of the house made Emily jolt awake. I found her pacing at 2 a.m., whispering to Nate as if soothing herself more than him. "What if he finds us? What if he takes him away?" she asked, her eyes red with exhaustion. I held her shoulders firmly. "He thrives on fear. But look at what you did today. You stood in front of a judge and told the truth." "That's strength, Emily," she exhaled shakily, nodding. Yet I knew fear didn't vanish overnight. It lingered, coiled like a snake in the dark, waiting for a moment of weakness. Still that night, as she finally drifted off on the couch, Nate curled against her. I saw something I hadn't before: resilience. Days turned into weeks, and with Clara's help, Emily built her case stronger. Each document, each witness, each piece of evidence chipped away at his facade of power. When he tried to intimidate her outside the grocery store, she didn't hide. She called the police. Watching him escorted away in handcuffs, even briefly, was a moment of triumph. "You didn't run," I told her later, pride swelling in my chest. She gave a tired smile. For Nate. Always for Nate. The battle wasn't over, but for the first time, it felt like the tide was shifting. He wasn't the unstoppable force she once believed. He was a man losing his grip. Finally, the restraining order was granted. The judge's words rang like a bell in the courtroom. "You are to have no contact with Emily or the child." Emily's shoulders sagged with relief as she clutched Nate. Tears streamed down her cheeks. But this time, they weren't just of fear. They were of release. "Outside," she whispered, "I never thought I'd make it this far." I pulled her into my arms. "You're stronger than you know, and this is only the beginning of your freedom." The war wasn't fully won. There were still custody battles and shadows of fear. But this victory was the crack of dawn after a long, endless night. For the first time, I allowed myself to believe, maybe, just maybe, Emily and Nate could finally breathe. The house felt different after the restraining order. The air seemed lighter, though shadows of fear still clung to the corners. Emily sat at the kitchen table, Nate on her lap, as morning sunlight streamed through the window. "I don't remember the last time I felt safe," she whispered, stroking Nate's hair. I smiled softly. "Safety isn't just what the court gives you. It's what you've built with your courage." Though relief had come, Emily still jumped at sudden noises, still checked the locks 3 times before bed. Healing wasn't immediate, but now, instead of silence and shame, she had support, a roof, and hope. The storm had passed, but rebuilding was just beginning. With Clara's guidance, Emily applied for full custody of Nate. It wasn't easy. The process was grueling, invasive, and exhausting. But each time doubt crept in, she looked at her son and found strength. One evening, she confessed, "For so long, I thought I was worthless. He made me believe I was nothing without him. But here, I'm starting to see myself differently." I reached across the table, squeezing her hand. "Because you are different. You're free now, and you're stronger than you ever knew." Slowly, Emily began to dream again, not of survival, but of a future. A job, a home of her own, a life built not on fear, but on resilience. Emily decided to take classes at the community center, leaving Nate with me for a few hours each week. She started learning new skills: bookkeeping, computers, even childcare certifications. The first day she returned, her eyes shone with something I hadn't seen in years: confidence. "I forgot what it felt like to accomplish something for myself," she said, smiling. Nate giggled in her arms, as if he knew his mother was stepping into her strength. It wasn't glamorous. It wasn't fast. But it was real. Step by step, Emily was carving a new path, not just for survival, but for growth. One afternoon, Emily sat quietly, staring at Nate playing with blocks. "Do you think I should tell him about his father someday?" she asked. The question pierced me. "One day when he's ready, and when you are too. But what matters most is that he knows the truth, that his mother fought for him, not against him." Emily nodded slowly, her eyes glistening. "I don't want him to grow up thinking weakness is normal. I want him to know strength." I placed my hand on hers. "And he will, because he'll see it in you every single day." For Emily, the past no longer defined her. It was simply a reminder of how far she'd come. Months passed, and Emily found part-time work at a local daycare. She was nervous at first, but the staff welcomed her warmly. "You have a gift with children," one supervisor told her. She came home that night glowing with pride. "It's not much, but it's honest, and it's mine," she said, holding Nate high in the air as he squealed with laughter. Watching her blossom was like watching spring after a long, harsh winter. She was no longer the frightened girl under a bridge. She was a mother, a worker, a survivor, and for the first time, her laughter filled the house again. On Nate's first birthday in my home, we held a small party. Just a few friends, Clara, and neighbors who had become our support system. Emily decorated the living room with balloons, baked a cake, and wore a smile that never faded. As Nate smeared frosting on his cheeks, she laughed freely, without the shadow of fear behind it. I watched her carefully, realizing how far she had come. From trembling in the cold under a bridge to standing tall, hosting her son's birthday surrounded by love. When I hugged her that evening, I whispered, "You've built a new life, Emily, and it's only just beginning." As months turned to a year, Emily grew steadier, surer of herself. The court had granted her full custody. The threats from her past had dwindled into silence. One evening, sitting on the porch, she said, "Grandma, you saved us. If you hadn't found me that day..." Her voice broke. I shook my head. "No, Emily, you saved yourself. I just gave you a safe place to begin." She smiled through tears, watching Nate chase fireflies in the yard. "Then this is our legacy. Not fear, not pain, but strength." I wrapped my arm around her shoulders. "Exactly, and Nate will grow up knowing his mother was braver than anyone." In that moment, I knew. The bridge was no longer a symbol of despair. It was the beginning of a story of survival, love, and unshakable strength.